What it do, everybody? It's your boy LOG from Where There's Smoke, here to do another video review, and this time we're doing episode 4 of The Acolyte. Um, I am enjoying some things about this series. It's under a lot of ridicule from a bunch of Star Wars fans, and kind of what I would like to say about it is I think they're doing some things right and they're doing some good things. If they could just stop doing the dumb, bad things that are just like basically getting in their own way. Just stay out of your own way, and I think this series wouldn't be bad. But there are things I enjoy. There are things that I have questions and like wonder why they do or take issue with. But yeah, if the show writers and the showrunners would just stay out of their own way, I think we would have a half decent series here. So let's go ahead and get into episode 4. It starts off with Jedi Master Kelnaka kind of just returning to his home. And the first thing I kind of noticed is he has a bunch of those spiral things that the witches had from episode 3. And that's just a really interesting thing. I don't know if he has like guilt from what he did or if he's like not brainwashed, but like they still have like kind of, what am I trying to say? Like not brainwashed, but still have like he's still traumatized from what they did, and he just thinks about it all the time, or what the significance is of him having those little spirals in his home. So next we get a scene that's at the Jedi Temple where you see some of the Padawans training, and I'm not sure of her name, but it's Yord's Padawan. We see Osha on her way out go to say goodbye, and this scene and another scene that I'm gonna talk about together, they're kind of apart, but they both kind of hit on the same note for me, where they're a little bit cheesy, but not only cheesy. It's more of they just kind of miss the mark, and they don't really line up with what I would really want to hear or what I would think would go on. The first one is between Osha and the apprentice when she's leaving, and Osha's talking to the apprentice and saying bye, and she's like, "Yeah, maybe I can come back sometime. We can meet up at a bar or a pub or whatever, and we can reminisce about Master Soul." And then the apprentice is like, "Well, did you tell him goodbye?" And Osha's like, "No, I've given him too much trouble already." To me, that was like super, super weird. It's like, why would you want to come back and reminisce with this other person about Soul, but you don't even care about him enough to say goodbye? I just thought that was like really weird, and like, why even have that dialogue in there? And then another time that was really weird was when they were on the planet where Jedi Master Kanaka is, and they're starting to go off on their journey. And not May, Osha tells Yord, if we find May, and it gets to the point where she's gonna end up trying to kill me or put me in danger, like, can you watch out for me and save me? I'm worried that Soul is like gonna be too focused on like protect or like redeeming May, that he might wait too long for to put me in danger. And I'm really expecting Yord to, because I feel like the Yord character really wants to be Obi-Wan like so damn bad, and like I guess that's what I'm starting to kind of expect from him a little bit. But I'm realizing that's only going to lead to disappointment, because she asked him, like, basically, like I was saying, if it comes down to it, will you protect me? And he basically just says some mumbo jumbo Jedi bullshit of like, oh, you're here to face yourself. It's like, I feel like Obi-Wan would say something similar, like, maybe there's a deeper mission here, like, try not to rush it, or like try to face your fears or whatever. But I feel like he would say something reassuring, like, but I won't put you in danger, or like, if the situation arises, I'll protect you. He would say something like reassuring to like say like, I got it and I'm in charge of the situation, and like it's not gonna go wrong. But this Yord guy's just like, yeah, like face it, like just so what? It's like, I don't know, not what I'm expecting from like a Jedi character, more or less, I guess. So jumping back into chronological order, after the Padawan training scene, we jump to Kofar, where we see May and Quamir basically landing and starting their mission of trying to find Jedi Master Kelnaka. And they have an interesting dialogue and the kind of what's going on between them. We're really getting a lot more on this Quamir character, and also a little bit of information on who their supposed master is. Something interesting he says, it's already interesting that like he says he's explored the planet and he's done it for May, not for their master. All this like weird stuff that he's saying. And then the real interesting dialogue is before they're about to head off, he says, "Your sister being alive doesn't change anything. You need to kill the Wookiee. You made a deal." So it's already their dialogue is kind of weird. She's like questioning if he found the Wookiee on that planet because he says like there's even bounty hunters that won't come here alone. She's like, "Yeah, you went here," and he's like, "Yeah, I did it for you," and all this. It's like I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And then that final dialogue, like I said, your sister being alive doesn't change anything. You need to kill the Wookiee. You made a deal. It's like, why does he care so much if he also just made some deal, or as he says a little later, he owes something to their master? If he's just in bondage to this guy as well, why does he care what her deal is and if she fulfills it? So it's kind of maybe a hint there that he is the Sith, but we'll see. After that, we get into the Jedi meeting where we see Sol, Vanestra, a bunch of other people talking about the whole thing and what they're gonna do. Um, they don't want the Senate to know, which is really weird. I kind of get it, but it's kind of weird. And then they brought in Kiadi Mundi, which everyone is up in arms about. That's one of the big blunders of this episode. Um, and to make him available for this timeline, they had to change when he was actually born, which a lot of people, if you did something like that to make it make more sense, I think people would be okay with it. But this guy has a line in one of the prequels, I believe it's the Phantom Menace, where he specifically says, "We haven't seen the Sith in over 1,000 years." So if he specifically says that when they're talking about the Sith and being like a brand new thing in the Phantom Menace in episode one, why would you specifically put him in here where there is like some Sith bubblings and uprisings that he's seeing and talking about and having conversation with other Jedi about? Why would you put that in here? It's just like you're shooting yourself in the foot, and a lot of people are up in arms. So I just don't see what, like, they changed his birthday and made him be born earlier in time so they could be here just to mess their storyline up. It really just seems like they're getting in their own way with stuff like this because they want like a big name in the background. Be cool with creating your own big names. Like Jedi Master Soul is already someone that I'm growing to respect and like and feel like he's a big character in this arc. So like you can create your own legends and your own badasses. You don't have to like always mooch off of the past. But anyway, they talk about hiding it from the council because they don't want the Senate to know, which is kind of weird. It really makes Vanestra look a little sus, if anything. And yeah, that whole meeting is just interesting. It just brings more conflict into the storyline rather than like answer more questions and like really sew things up and make it copacetic. So, um, and then they say if May doesn't come peacefully, one Jedi mentions that, and then Vanestra says, "I don't expect it to come to that." But she just had argued how dangerous May was because she said this, Soul's trying to downplay it, and Vanestra's like, "Well, she's killed two Jedi Master," and then another Jedi Master, I believe her name is Torin or something, or Holden, brings up to Master Vanestra, "Well, what if she resists?" And Vanestra's like, "Oh, I don't think it'll come to that." Well, you just argued she's dangerous enough to kill two Jedi. So I don't know. Vanestra's all over the place. Then right after they have this meeting, they go out in the hallway and Soul confronts Vanestra because he wants to be like part of the mission to go bring May in, which is what they ultimately decide to do to keep it on the hush and keep it on the down low from the Jedi High Council. Soul says, "I want to be a part of this mission," and Vanestra's like, "No, I don't think you should because you have personal connection," which is the smartest thing she said this episode so far. But then Soul's like, "Oh, what if I bring Osha with me?" And then she's like, "Oh, I like that idea." It's like, so muddy the water even more with two people that May is connected to. You like that idea. It's like, what is going through y'all's heads? Y'all don't seem like proper Jedi, and I just wonder, like, who... Like, I kind of see it for a plot reason, but, like, for what Jedi usually do and their line of thinking, I don't get it. So that meeting and, like, the little meeting with Soul and Vanestra in the hallway after was just kind of like, what the hell? I definitely have my eyes on Vanestra for a potential. Either they don't know how to write this character, or she's a Sith Lord. Potentially, it's like one of the Jar Jar wild theories, but it's like that character is like all over the place and just kind of giving red flags because of that. Another side note that I thought whenever Soul was saying there's no way May could have survived the fall was like well, maybe someone saved her. And then I started thinking, like, again, where were the other Jedi whenever Soul was trying to save May and Osha? And who knew to send them to check for the kids in the first place? There's a lot to that backstory that we don't know that could lead to interesting stuff in the future with this story. Um, so then we jump back to Quamir and May on their little journey, and Quamir's just getting more and more shady by the foot. Uh, he questions how May must specifically engage with a weapon. And then he says she's failed because she's used little daggers. She used the poison, and he's asking, if you disarm the Jedi, can you steal their lightsaber and use it against them? Does that count, or is that cheating? Um, he asks, then May's like, well, what is your deal with him? What's going on with you and him? And he kind of like, stumbles a bit and like is taken aback, and then says what he owes him. And he's like, his deal, he collects people. And then May's like, well, have you seen his face? I haven't. And he's like, well, you know I haven't. And then he kind of like changes the subject. And at one point, kind of before he changes the subject, May asks what Osha was like whenever Quamir talked to her. And he says, he kind of thinks, and he's like, yeah, she's in over her head. And then he's like, but I think she really likes that Soul guy, which is weird because one, I don't know how he would know that she liked him as like a master or whatever, and I don't know how he would know Soul's name because I don't think that was mentioned either, unless May has told him some point off camera. So those are two red flags about if we can trust this guy and whether or not he knows more than he's really leading on. Another small note that I kind of forgot to mention earlier was that uh, Kelmeka, the Wookiee Jedi, has been incognito or like not in touch with the other Jedi for like over a year, which I don't know kind of what that's all about. Then we get the final scene with May and Quamir, where they're kind of running through the jungle, and he's kind of seemed to be rushing her more than ever in this scene. And then when he realizes she's a little overwhelmed, he like kind of calms down, eases up. He offers to, like, go get her water, tries to become helpful. He really starts to seem not more than the other scenes, but just as much that he could be the Sith Master or tied in with the Sith Master deeper than we really realize. And this is where May kind of like done with the whole thing. When he kind of wanders off to go get her water, she like sets up a trap and traps him to get away from him. And it really just, you know, we're left with a ton of questions at the ending scene. And then one small little note is like, I don't know if this really matters or not, but as she's running away, as Quamir's tied up in the trap, he says he'll kill you. And I don't know if that really matters much or not. He's probably just saying whatever he can because he's trapped, but it definitely is not an encouraging sign from him. So then we kind of have the final scene where May uh, comes up on Kalnaka in his hut. She's gonna basically turn herself into him and everything, and she finds him dead. And then Osha and the rest of the Jedi run up on the house. They kind of yell at May inside, come out, whatever. They kind of think she's killed Kalnaka at this point. And then it's kind of this interesting scene where she's looking outside from the hut at all of them, and she sees the evil guy descend on them and kind of comes from behind. And it's a very interesting, well done scene. I like how the lighting gets dark. The guy, on the first time I watched it, it seems like he's floating up out of the trees, but on second watching, he actually does walk up out of the trees, but it just is a credit to how well the scene is done. He really seems like a ghost-like, creepy figure. Uh, like I said at the beginning, this episode, it does some things really well. There's a scene with the bugs and that hole that I didn't really go over earlier in the scene where they're going through the forest with Osha and Soul, where the bugs don't get disturbed by any of the Jedi, but it's perhaps Osha's light that brings one of them attracted to her because she's the most light pure one, not as bogged down by the system of the Jedi as the others, and she's the most pure light one. So the bug's like awakened by her, and then he flies, and Soul kills him with a sword. But anyway, point being, they do stuff really well in this episode, and the thing they did best in this episode for me is the final scene where May comes in to see Kalnaka dead, and then Soul, Yord, and Osha and all the rest show up. They're kind of calling her May out of the hut, Then the Sith guy comes out of the forest again, really well done with the lighting, the creepy mask, the way he comes down creepy and slow, the music, everything. And then we have the kind of final confrontation, which is interesting, and it just leaves us wondering a lot for episode 5. Um, but I really enjoyed the way this final scene was done. It leaves us really wondering if Quamir is either the guy behind the mask and he's the master, or if he's the master's apprentice, and there's just one more layer to this that we haven't seen yet. So I really like the final scene. I can't say enough good things about it. Uh, and we're just gonna have to wait till next week to see. I wish they hadn't done the other little small things that I mentioned earlier, which is like the awkwardness, the kind of bad dialogue, the putting Kiadi Mundi in with like no reason that's applicable, and it actually just messes up their timeline and storyline of things worse. Um, but overall, I kind of like this episode. It has me eager for the next one, and I have high hopes for the series. Hopefully, they can clean it up on the back four and nail the finale. But we'll see. And sometimes shows are not the best version of themselves until seasons 2 and 3 and 4. If we think back to like The Walking Dead, it was really, really good in season 1, but there definitely were major flaws that we wouldn't like seeing carried over to season 2 and even 3. So I think if you think about that with that in mind, think that this might not be the final version of the show. It might have room to improve and get better, and hopefully it does. So I'm holding out hope, and there are things about it I enjoy. It's not like just the whole episode is shit. So I guess that's my review for episode 4, and until next week we see episode 5. I guess that's LOG, Where There's Smoke. I'm out.